Hello and welcome everyone to this, our final session in our Life After Stroke series for 2022. My name is Avril Drummond and I'm the chair of the European Life After Stroke Forum Scientific Committee. We set up the forum in 2019 because there were so few opportunities for people interested in this area to meet at conferences or network at workshops or just to meet. And we wanted to set up the forum with the aim of creating an opportunity for everyone interested in this area to come together. So whether you are a researcher, a scientist, a medical professional, a policymaker involved in advocacy or support groups, or whether you're a stroke survivor or a carer, we want to have opportunities to come together to share evidence and research about this very neglected area. Our next event will be in Barcelona on the 10th of March, so please do put this in your diary. It will be our first opportunity to meet in person since the start of the pandemic. More details about this will be put up at the end of this session, and we will also share links with you, but please do put this in your diary. Before I introduce you to the chair of this session, I have to thank a few people. First of all, I'd like to thank the scientific committee. They really are my dream team of people, and they've helped us put together the content for this and the other seminars. I'd also like to sincerely thank our sponsors who have enabled us to bring this to you and to provide free registration. And of course, our partners who have endorsed and promoted this event. As with all our Life After Stroke events, the person with stroke is absolutely central to our sessions today, and the voice of the stroke survivor should play an essential role in all we do. So we're really thrilled. We've had 3 wonderful sessions programmed for today. 2 of them we have already run. We have run Return to Work and we've run Fatigue. And now we're going to focus on exercise, which is an important topic. Just a couple of things before I introduce the chair. I do hope that you enjoy the sessions, but please know that you can also get a CPD point for every session that you attend, and that will be available when you complete the survey after the sessions. If you want to tweet about the event, and please do, we're on #LifeAfterStroke. And finally, please do be an active audience. Please do post comments and chat, and please put up questions and answers for our speakers. Finally, if you want to see view subtitles, if you look at the top of the screen, there is a CC button, and if you press that, you will be able to have those subtitles available. So enough of me. I'd like to welcome you to the chair of this session, and that is Juliette Bouvier. And Juliette is the chief executive of the Stroke Association, which is a very large charity which provides support to stroke survivors in the UK. So I'm very happy to hand over now to Juliette and her fabulous speakers. And I do hope you enjoy this session. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Juliette Bouvier, and I'm Chief Executive of the Stroke Association in the UK. So welcome everybody to this afternoon's webinar called Physical Activity, Getting Active Without Sweat and Lycra. So we know that exercise is an important part of rehabilitation after stroke. This session will include a summary of the evidence base for physical activity, and how therapists can support stroke survivors to get and stay physically active. We'll hear from a stroke survivor about her tips and experiences, and I hope the session will help to bust some common myths about physical activity and stroke, including that it's not all about gyms, sweat, and lycra. So I'd like to introduce our 4 speakers. We will then have a live question and answer session. So our first speaker is Craig Pankhurst from the UK. In 2018, at the age of 39, Craig experienced a stroke. In the initial months of his recovery journey, Craig made the decision to launch a charity to support his fellow stroke survivors. A Stroke of Luck was launched in May 2019, with the primary focus of providing survivors and carers with access to activity and exercise programs. During the pandemic, A Stroke of Luck partnered with the Stroke Association in the UK to create a series of stroke-specific videos which stroke survivors across the world can access. Craig will demo some chair-based exercises, which we're all encouraged to do at home. Our second speaker is Marie Gunnes from Norway, who will present the last study, Physical Activity to Prevent Functional Decline. Marie is a physiotherapist and research scientist at the Department of Health and Research at SINTEF in Norway, the largest independent research organisation in Scandinavia. She has clinical experience in primary and secondary healthcare services and a PhD in clinical medicine from the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. Marie has been involved in several clinical trials, with her research mainly focused on rehabilitation after stroke and secondary prevention in terms of adherence to physical activity and exercise following stroke. Our third speaker is Dr. Sarah Moore from the UK, who will present the PARAS programme, Physical Activity Routines After Stroke. This is an evidence-based, supported self-management behaviour change programme designed to give healthcare professionals the tools to help stroke survivors increase their physical activity and reduce sedentary behaviour. Sarah Moore is an assistant professor at Northumbria University and an honorary physiotherapist at Northumbria Healthcare NHS Trust. Sarah has worked clinically with stroke survivors and runs research programs investigating stroke rehabilitation and recovery. And our fourth speaker is Greta Lunde from Norway. Greta experienced a severe stroke, a cerebral sinus venous thrombosis that left her totally paralysed in 1994, over 28 years ago, on her 22nd birthday. Greta tells her personal story about what motivated her to get active and what has helped her to move more. I have no doubt that Greta will inspire all of us with her positivity, resilience, and determination.
Hi, my name is Craig Pankhurst. I'm a stroke survivor and the founder of the UK-based charity A Stroke of Luck. In late April 2018, I had my stroke. At the time, I was a business owner and worked in the field of education. During the initial 6 months of my recovery, I made the decision to close the business as I wanted to support other stroke survivors, and so I launched the charity. A Stroke of Luck specifically focuses on the continuing recovery journey of a stroke survivor. With a background in sports and health and fitness, I wanted to use my knowledge and experience and enable survivors to lead a positive life post-stroke. In 2020, and again this year, 2022, we partnered with the Stroke Association and created stroke-specific activity videos using our team of neurophysiotherapists. These videos have now been accessed across the world as survivors are able to engage with them from the comfort and safety of their own homes. Each video is only 10 to 15 minutes long. Using our red, amber and green approach, survivors are able to follow a series of videos which are specific to their post-stroke abilities. Our aim is to continue to develop content stroke survivors engage with. If you'd like to see what we're doing at A Stroke of Luck, please head over to our website, www.astrokeofluck.co.uk. If you'd like to get involved with us, please hit the link on our website and let us know how you can help. Enjoy the video that you're just about to see with one of our neurophysios, and I wish you all well.
Hi, I'm Becky Robbins and I'm a specialist neurophysiotherapist, and these activities are to get you moving.
Before starting the warm-up to this activity,
It is very important that carers and family members watch the Advice and Exercises for Carers video.
Okay, so this is your warm-up. So you'll need to be seated in your chair for this. If you need a carer or family member to help you move your leg during these activities, please ensure that they watch the guidance video for carers. Okay, so we're going to be sitting in your chair, and the first exercise is marching on the spot. So we're going to start with your weaker leg, going to bring it up as high as you can, and then place it back down again. And then with the stronger one, and place it back down. So we're going to do 10 of those. Are you ready with me? Off you go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Well done. So now we're going to start moving our knees a little bit more. All right, so again, you may need a carer to help lift your weaker leg. But if not, if you can try and do it as much as you can yourself, that would be great. So we're going to straighten your leg out in front of you, and we're going to hold it for 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1, and then relax down. So that's number 1. We're going to try with your stronger leg now. Straighten it out, hold it, 3, 2, 1, and relax. Going to repeat that another 2 times on each leg. Off you go, weaker side, hold, 2, 3, and relax. Well done. Stronger side, hold, 2, 3, and relax. One more. And down. Last one. 1, 2, 3, and relax. Great. So now we're going to move our feet. So the action that we're going to do is toes up, down, heels up, down. And we're going to do that 10 times. Try as much as you can to move your weaker leg, your weaker foot and ankle, and we're going to do them at the same time, both legs together. We're going to go for 10. Are you ready? Off you go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Well done. We're going to take a short break there to go over the coaching points for the warm-up.
Amber Group, warm-up coaching points. Keep your back up straight as you march your legs 10 times. Keep up as tall as possible as you straighten your leg out in front. Try not to lean backwards. Repeat 3 times each side. Perform toe raises and heel raises in a sitting position. Try to move your feet at the same time. Repeat 10 times.
Okay, so this is your first activity, Amber Group. So we're going to do stand up, sit downs. We're going to do 10 of them. Now you may need something in front of you. So as you stand up, you can hold on to it to support your balance. Or you can use your walking aid or a family or carer to be on your side to help you. For this video, I'm going to use a walking stick in my stronger hand. So as I stand up, it can help with my balance. So what I want you to do is just wiggle forward in the chair a little bit. Make sure your feet are both firmly on the floor. I want you to lean forward in your chair as if you're bringing your nose over your toes. Then you're going to stand up using both feet. Push through both feet to stand up. Stand tall. And then you're going to lower slowly, reaching back for the chair, making sure you're using both legs at the same time. As your bottom touches the chair, you're going to go again. Okay? Standing up tall, and then reach back, slow, 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 so you bottom out, and then sit down. So we're going to do 10 of those. So we're going to do it together. Go at your own pace. You don't have to go as quick as me, but we're going to do 10. Are you ready? Off we go. Number 1, up and down. Remember, as soon as your bottom touches the chair, you're going to stand up again. 2, and 3. Stand up tall. And 4. Use both legs as you sit down. And 5. Push through both legs. 6, over halfway now. 7, 8, keep going, 2 more, 9, down, last one, and 10. Fantastic. Slowly sit yourself back down, have a breather, and we're going to take a short break there to go through the coaching points of this activity.
Amber Group, exercise 1 coaching points. If you use a walking aid, have this close by to ensure balance once standing. You may wish to have a family member or carer close by to supervise. The standing and sitting motion should be controlled. Don't rush. Reach back for the chair if needed to control the sitting motion. Push through both feet as you stand. Repeat 10 times.
Okay, so for activity 2, you will need a chair or a supportive surface like a worktop in front of you to hold on to. Now, ideally, you want to hold on with both hands. But if you can't with your weaker side, that's absolutely fine. Ensure you're holding on with your stronger hand, okay? Now, what we're actually going to ask you to do is step to the side and then step back again. So I'm going to show you face on first of all, and then I'm going to turn around so I can hold on to my chair and show you the activity from a different direction. Okay, so you're going to be stepping one way to meet and then back to the middle. Okay, now we're going to do 10 of those. So I'm going to turn around so you can see from behind as I'm doing the activity, and I will count as we do our 10 steps. Okay, so hold on to your surface, and with your weaker leg, you're going to step out to the side and then back again. We're going to do 10. Okay, are you ready? Off you go. 1, and back to the middle. 2, and back to the middle. 3, and back to the middle. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and last one, 10. Fantastic. Have a bit of a breather, and we're going to do it again, just to really get your legs moving and get your heart rate up a little bit. So we're going to turn around again, and on my count, we're going to do another 10. Are you ready? Off you go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Well done. Now don't forget, you might get a little bit puffed doing this exercise, but that's absolutely fine. We want to try and strengthen your heart and lungs as we're doing these activities. So we're going to take a short break there and go over the coaching point for this activity.
Amber Group, exercise 2 coaching points. Stand at a work surface or chair for support. Keep your back straight as you step your weaker leg out to the side. Keep your toes pointing forwards throughout. Repeat 10 times and then rest and repeat.
Okay, for this last activity in the Let's Get Moving section, I need you to have a chair or a supportive surface on your stronger side so you can hold on with your stronger arm to help with your balance. And what we're going to do is have a little boogie. We're going to start doing a bit of a dance. We're going to wiggle our hips, bend our knees, and just have a wiggle as we're moving to some music. So what I'd like you to do is pop on the radio, pop some music on that's got a really good beat, and just have fun. So we're going to do 30 seconds, all right? So we'll time you. Are you ready? We're going to pop some music on and off we go. So just have a wiggle from side to side. Move your knees. If you can get your arm moving as well, that's great. Just move along to the music and keep going. Exercise isn't all about doing reps and numbers. It's about having fun and making sure you're keeping active. This is a really good way. Keep going until the 30 seconds are up. Keep going and stop. Absolutely fantastic. Now, if you really enjoy dancing, you like that type of activity, why don't you pop the whole song on and just have a little boogie for the rest of the number? But we're going to stop there and go over the coaching points for this activity.
Amber Group. Exercise 3 coaching points. Stand at a work surface or chair for support. Put on some music that has a beat. Try to wiggle your hips in time with the beats of the music and continue for 30 seconds. As a progression, repeat this for the whole song.
I hope you really enjoyed this session.
Thank you so much for the introduction and for the invitation to come here and talk about the last study. It is really an honor for me to be here to present a study in relation to the important aspect of physical activity in preventing functional decline following stroke. So I would like to start off by quoting some of our most prominent stroke rehabilitation researchers, claiming that all stroke clinicians, they play an important role in encouraging and empowering stroke survivors to become physically active and make physical activity a part of their everyday lives. And I believe this is an important message to many of us here today, knowing that physical activity and exercise are important parts of recovery after stroke. And it should be started already in the early phases and sustained throughout the continuum of care. During the last decades, there has been an increasing focus on evidence-based treatment in the acute and subacute phases after stroke. But research which is focusing on optimal long-term follow-up, well, that still remains insufficient. And still, physical activity and exercise are highly recommended in chronic phase to sustain function and also to prevent functional decline. And physical activity is also an important part of secondary stroke prevention to reduce the risk of recurrent stroke and other vascular events. And as we can see from this illustration, it shows the 10 most important modifiable risk factors for ischemic stroke. And we can see that physical activity, that is actually considered the second most important factor after high blood pressure. However, sedentary behavior that is unfortunately very prevalent in people with stroke. And a large systematic review, which was published in 2017, it was including over 100 studies and 5,000 patients. And this study demonstrated that overall people after stroke, they take less than half of the daily steps of people who don't have a stroke in a typical day. And they spend on average 80% of the day in sedentary behavior. And the same review further showed the remarkable difference between the average daily number of transitions, walking duration, and time standing in people with stroke compared to matched healthy individuals. And some of these studies, they also followed patients from early post-stroke and all the way through 1 year later. And they found that this sedentary behavior, well, it does not change. And unfortunately, the low activity levels, they seems to persist over time. Today, there is still a lack of research within how to develop new long-term interventions to help stroke survivors to achieve a more active lifestyle. There is, however, some evidence that individualized tailored counseling, and that may on its own or combined with structured exercise programs, improve long-term adherence in physical activity and functional exercise capacity after stroke. And motivational interviewing and goal setting also appears to be important ingredients in enhancing adherence to physical activity. So the Life After Stroke study, or the last study, that was actually the first randomized controlled trial to evaluate the efficacy and safety of an 18-month follow-up program of individualized tailored counseling on physical activity and exercise after stroke. And the last study was initially developed and designed thanks to these experts within stroke rehabilitation in Norway. They collaborated with some representatives from the departments of the participating municipalities, these two hospitals, and also the National Association for Stroke Survivors in Norway. And in addition, we also had some international collaborators, and the group of researchers really expanded over the years. So the main results of the last study was published in Stroke in 2018. And the primary aim of this study was to investigate whether a long-term intervention program of regular individualized coaching on physical activity and exercise increased levels to maintain optimal motor function. And further, secondary aims were to maintain optimal independence in activities of daily living, or ADL, balance, walking ability, and also health-related quality of life. So the last study was designed as a multi-center study, meaning that we included participants at 2 large hospitals in Norway. And we had a really close collaboration with the primary healthcare services of the participating municipalities. And to enter the last study, we had some eligibility criteria. And the most important inclusion criteria were the participants, they had to be diagnosed with stroke, they had to be discharged from hospital and community dwelling. And their functional level, they should correspond to below 5 points on the modified ranking scale, meaning that the participants were functional independent enough to live at home. And cognitive function should correspond to over 20 points at the mini mental state examination, corresponding to the patient not being demented. And if patients suffered from serious comorbidity with life expectancy less than 6 months, or if they had any contraindications to participate in motor training, well, then they were excluded from LAST. So participants, they were recruited from the stroke units and screened for inclusion in LAST at the outpatient clinics approximately 3 months post-stroke. And in total, 380 participants were included in LAST. And the participants, they were randomized to either a control group or an intervention group. And both groups were followed for 18 consecutive months. And although we had some loss to follow up at the time of retest in both groups, all participants, they were included in what we call an intention to treat analysis. So this illustration is an overview of central time points from onset of stroke to inclusion and follow-up in LAST. And the participants who were randomized to the control arm, they received standard community-based treatment based on the Norwegian national guidelines for stroke. And the participants in the intervention arm, they received a follow-up program for 18 months, in addition to standard care. And the intervention was delivered by the primary healthcare services. And the program comprised monthly individualized coaching in physical activity and exercise by a dedicated physiotherapist. And the coaching involved elements from motivational interviewing techniques, and the main purpose that was really to motivate and encourage the participants to follow a training program that was adapted to their individual needs and capabilities. And the participants, they used training diaries, and in general, they were encouraged to perform 30 minutes of physical activity 7 days a week and 45 to 60 minutes of exercise once a week. And exercise should also include 2 to 3 bouts of vigorous activity, aiming to reach levels of high intensity. So, according to the protocol, the monthly meetings, they were planned as face-to-face meetings in the participants' home for the first 6 months. And during the next 6 months, every second meeting could be a phone meeting if they preferred, while 4 of the final 6 meetings could be phone meetings. And the thought behind this was really to gradually establish more independent activity behavior and for the participants to take more and more responsibility of their own recovery. So, moving over to some results. This table shows a selection of some of the most important characteristics of the study participants. And the mean age were around 72 years. We had slightly more men than women included, And overall, these outcomes, they indicated mild severity of stroke, mild cognitive impairment, and also mild to moderate functional dependency. However, there was a reasonable range of comorbidity among the participants in both samples. So moving over to the primary and secondary outcomes. This table appears really busy, and I don't expect you to interpret this at first glance, so I will try to guide you through the most important findings. So we saw from the motor assessment scale, which was assessing motor function, that both the intervention and the control group declined relative to baseline. So contrary to our hypothesis, there were no significant differences between the intervention and the control group. And the same pattern were basically seen for the secondary outcomes as well. So unfortunately, we were unable to show any benefit of the intervention in maintaining independence in activities of daily living, balance, walking ability, or health-related quality of life. We also had some safety outcomes which showed no differences in adverse events between the groups, and all over the frequency of all vascular events was low in both groups. However, there were actually 39% more hospital admissions because of vascular events in the control group compared with the intervention group. And I think it would have been really interesting to see how these measures would have developed 5 years from follow-up, for instance. But we had to conclude that the regular individualized coaching, it did not improve maintenance of motor function or the secondary outcomes compared with standard care. The intervention should, however, be regarded as safe. And although these main results were neutral, when we are investigating how an intervention was really implemented in a clinic, that is often a forgotten piece of the larger puzzle when we are trying to get a more comprehensive understanding of a new intervention. And we had some secondary data from the intervention group, which really gave us a unique opportunity to study adherence during this long-term follow-up. So we decided to take a closer look at adherence among the participants in the intervention group. And these results, they showed highly significant associations, both statistically and clinically, between adherence to physical activity and exercise and motor function, walking capacity, balance, and self-perceived functional outcomes. So in other words, those who managed to follow their individual physical activity program, they reached better functional outcomes. There are, however, multifactorial aspects of adherence, and this illustration from the World Health Organization shows that adherence may be affected by factors related to the social or economic aspects, or aspects related to the therapy itself, the patient, the condition, and also the health system or the healthcare team factors. So this brings us over to the implications for clinical practice, or more specifically, what can this study tell us about which practical actions are needed by stroke survivors and healthcare professionals in terms of increasing physical activity after stroke? Well, first of all, clinicians should be aware of the different dimensions affecting adherence to physical activity and exercise over time. And if we try to identify the potential barriers, but also the motivators of the stroke survivors, we believe that this will enable clinicians to deliver more focused support and guidance for physical activity. And despite the neutral results from the last study, we still believe that shared decision making is essential in a long-term perspective. And further, intermediate goal setting appears to be important. So for the stroke survivor, it is important to set goals that are meaningful to you and choose activities that you enjoy and that can be a part of your everyday life and are in line with your goals. Because individualizing follow-up after stroke is important, just as personal preferences are important. And our results showed how healthcare professionals probably should give special attention to specific subgroups of individuals, for instance, older individuals, and also those with reduced functional independence after stroke. And finally, to perceive adherence to physical activity over time, it may be helpful for many to use training diaries, as we did in our study, or other types of planners or technological devices. There are some opportunities out there. So we still believe that there is a role for coaching in stroke interventions. And today there is an ongoing clinical trial, which is part of the Norwegian long-term follow-up project, Last Long. And the aim of this multi-center study is really to investigate the benefit of regular follow-up by a stroke coordinator who promotes a multimodal individualized intervention, which is not only focusing on physical activity, but also the different domains of physical function, social function, lifestyle factors, medication, and also cognitive function. And as this study is still ongoing, we are really excited about the results in the future. And my colleagues at NTNU in Norway and their collaborating partners are really working hard these days to include participants. And they are actually close to 300 stroke survivors now. So I think there are some really exciting results to come in the near future. So I think I will finish this presentation by emphasizing that we should continue to develop personalized approaches that can support and empower stroke survivors to make physical activity a part of their everyday lives in the long term. So with that, and on behalf of the last collaboration group, I would like to thank you all for the attention. So thank you so much for listening.
Hi, my name's Sarah. I'm a physio and I'm an associate professor at Northumbria University. And today I'm going to tell you about my research on supporting physical activity and sedentary behaviour after change and things that I've learned over the course of doing this work. So we know that exercise is good after stroke. The Cochrane Review on Physical Fitness Training tells us that exercise is safe and that it improves fitness, balance and speed and walking capacity. And I saw this for myself when I undertook my PhD, and we did a structured exercise programme for 19 weeks, 3 times a week. And we saw significant improvements across all different domains of impairment, activity and participation. So after I'd done my PhD, I was really keen to kind of implement these findings into practice. So we set up an exercise after stroke programme in Newcastle in the United Kingdom, working with the local council and the local community stroke team. And for those that did attend, it worked really well. And we had qualitative and quantitative feedback to say so. But actually, out of the 700 patients that were referred each year, we were only getting about 60 referrals and only about 36 completed. And if we look at the literature, and if I think about the focus groups that I've done on kind of the barriers and enablers to physical activity after stroke, there's common things that come up, for example, getting to exercise centres, having the right support to exercise from healthcare professionals or other professionals, courses of exercise finishing because the funding is pooled, exercise services being time limited. So only, for example, our exercise service was only for 10 weeks. And also kind of a bit of a postcode lottery for who has relevant exercise services in their area. And also structured exercise isn't the best thing for everyone. If we all think about what we enjoy with regards to physical activity, it's not always getting sweaty and kind of getting in your lycra. So there's lots of different ways to be physically active, and really it's just about expending calories and raising your heart rate. So this can be through everyday activities like gardening, climbing the stairs, doing the housework, through active recreation, cycling, dancing, walking, that type of thing. Or it can also be through more structured physical activity through different sporting events. So after my PhD and after kind of trying to translate those findings into the community, I decided that we need to think about different ways to support people to be more active after stroke. And this was part of my NIHR clinical lectureship. So we spent a long period of time kind of asking stroke survivors and informal carers and healthcare professionals and looking at the literature and seeing what the most likely to be effective components were of this intervention. And some of the key things that came out from this development work, which if you wanted to read about it more is in those two references at the bottom of the slide, is that, you know, with any physical activity, when you're supporting physical activity, it needs to be person-centred. And there needs to be appropriate support. And in our study, from the co-design workshops, excuse me, it was shown that this is likely to be through a healthcare professional. And so we incorporated healthcare professionals in this intervention. So it's about kind of part of this intervention was building up both healthcare professionals' knowledge and skills, but also stroke survivors' knowledge and skills to be more physically active after stroke. And part of the techniques we used within the intervention and that we taught to stroke survivors were around goal setting, action planning, coping planning, and how to kind of self-monitor activity. And we chose a lot of these different techniques based on the literature and based on our focus groups. We did a big period of kind of planning the intervention. And we were very aware from the focus groups that we needed this intervention to be sustainable. So the activities that people were selecting to do, they needed to be able to carry on doing them or think about what they would do if that activity stopped. Part of the intervention was providing stroke survivors with different options to be physically active. So we created a resource locally that kind of showed exactly what physical activity options there were in the area, and the healthcare professionals took this along with them as part of the intervention. And also from the focus groups, people mentioned how important timing was, and that there's not one time that everybody would benefit from. So it's really thinking about that individual and thinking about the timing of this intervention for them. And as I said in the previous slide, it's about selecting meaningful activities and meaningful outcomes for the person. So that's the nuts and bolts of kind of the intervention. So then we tested the intervention in 3 different community stroke services in the northeast of the UK. It was a small study, but we collected quite rich data through quantitative and qualitative analysis. So we had 11 healthcare professionals who we trained up to deliver the intervention, and 19 stroke survivors who received the intervention. And of those, 17 completed the intervention. We did notice kind of, because it was mainly the healthcare professionals that were recruiting the patients, that there was a bit of selection bias. So they were tending to recruit people who they thought would do better from the intervention, rather than kind of offering it to everyone it might have been applicable to. We also, as part of the training, we got them to use a dictaphone, so we got them to record sessions where they were delivering the intervention with the patients. And actually, a lot of the healthcare professionals found this quite off-putting, and so as a result of that, didn't recruit as many patients as we thought they might. So thinking about how long it takes this intervention to deliver, if you were thinking about kind of incorporating it into your practice, it took on average 108 minutes, but that kind of ranged from about 39 minutes to 238 minutes, so it was quite variable. And the feedback was from the stroke survivors and the healthcare professionals that although this was delivered in the community, it'd be really great to have the option of delivering it earlier in the pathway, so within inpatient care for certain patients. So what physical activity were people selecting? Well, they mainly selected walking because it was free and available and it was something that they wanted to work on. And interestingly, no one selected sedentary behaviour. With regards to kind of how they monitored their activity, because this was an important part of the intervention, a lot of people, well, the majority of people chose pedometers and a diary. But we found, as been reported previously, that for some people, if they had slow walking speeds, the pedometers weren't picking up their steps. So they had to work with the healthcare professionals to think about another method to self-monitor. But most of them kind of thought about something that suited them. The vast majority of people were able to identify some social support, whether it was from a partner or a friend. Nobody identified kind of support from kind of a stroke forum, but that would be an option as well. And what people reported, so this wasn't an effectiveness study, it was a feasibility study, but from the qualitative data, people were saying that kind of once they received the PARAS intervention, it seemed more person-centred than the rehab that they were receiving before in some cases. And they also noted perceived benefits, which kind of things like increased mood, improving physical activity, and more understanding of their recovery after stroke through kind of the goal setting process. And the healthcare professionals reported that actually it was quite a sustainable way of kind of supporting people to be physically active. And they also reported that the training they had was quite beneficial, but they needed more training on motivation. As I say, that reference at the bottom of the slide has got more information about that study. So what did we do afterwards? Well, we thought carefully about how can we kind of, findings from the study, how can we make them useful for other people? So we put together a website, which is freely available, and it's a healthcare professional or professional facing website. So it's got lots of resources to show how you could deliver this intervention within your practice. So there's lots of little bite-sized videos to discuss how to kind of deliver the intervention. Then there's lots of different resources, kind of stroke survivor resources. So we had a workbook within the intervention that's available and you could download it. There's physical activity diaries, there's goal summary sheets. We've also got health professional resources. So as I say, with the physical activity options booklet in the study, I kind of gave people kind of a little file with all the options in that area. Obviously, it's impossible for me to do this for around the world, but what we've done is we've kind of created a template. So with kind of things that would be generally available, like websites and things, but also with the options kind of put in, well, what's available in your area. And people fed back that was really useful for kind of rotational staff having that guide, but just making sure that you update it regularly. So there's also kind of a checklist and reflection form for if you're doing some training on this or if you're wanting to kind of buddy up with someone and see how you're kind of doing with delivery. There's things like communication ramps for people with aphasia, advice on self-monitoring, lots of different tools there. As people have asked questions, we've kind of developed a frequently asked questions list. And also there's an evaluation survey, which I would encourage if you do try and use PARAS, if you could fill it in, it would be really helpful because we can learn how to develop it more. So just to finish, I was asked to kind of provide some top tips that I've kind of learned around people with stroke being physically active. So if you're a stroke survivor, it's really about kind of setting goals and choosing, well, what's meaningful for you and what activity will allow you to kind of achieve a meaningful outcome, whether it's to get out of the house or to improve your mood or any other kind of outcome. Obviously, if you're worried about exercising, you need to check with your GP or consultant if you've got concerns. But it's really important to kind of set, as well as having long-term ambitions, it's important to break those ambitions down into short-term goals and plan for if something goes wrong, so if-then plans. Find a buddy. There's lots of research to support kind of, you're better if you're doing this with someone else supporting you. And that, as I say, it might be your partner, it might be a friend, or it might be that you go to somewhere like a forum, like the Stroke Association has My Stroke Guide, which offers kind of a forum for people, which is really useful. And, a lot of people after stroke have a lot of different problems. So it's, don't worry about going straight to kind of, leaping around in a gym first of all. Just start small and progress gradually. And kind of by setting small goals and seeing that you're achieving them, it kind of motivates you a bit more. And then my tips for kind of supporting people with stroke to be physically active from a professional point of view is we use kind of some motivational interviewing techniques within the intervention. So OARS techniques, open questions, affirmations, reflections, summarising. And this really helped with kind of people's listening skills. Create a repository, as I've talked about earlier, of local activity options. Provide people with advice on self-monitoring, so if someone is walking quite slowly, probably a pedometer isn't going to be the thing for them, but what can they use instead? If someone's done well, being really positive about it, we found that in the study people responded really well from that. And trying to think about ways that you can link with local services that are already there to increase options for physical activity. If you've got a higher education institution close to you that's got physio students, could they be linked into kind of doing a class? Could your local council be linked into helping set up different resources? If you're going to embed this kind of supporting physical activity into practice, then measure your outcomes to show that this is actually going to improve lives for people after stroke. And if you've done something great and you feel that kind of, people could benefit from that, share things on Twitter or different forums, share things with your colleagues that have worked well. So finally, just to acknowledge everybody that's helped me through kind of my research and clinical journey to date.
Hello, my name is Grete Lunde and I'm a stroke survivor. I'm going to talk to you today about the importance of exercise and activity after stroke. I experienced a severe stroke, a cerebral sinus venous thrombosis that left me totally paralyzed in 1994, over 28 years ago, the same day I turned 22. The doctors were certain it was migraine at first and sent me home with a bag full of medicines after I came to the ER with an extremely painful headache and nausea. I had all the classic warning signs for CSVT, but the doctors couldn't see that, and instead they put me in an induced coma for about 10 to 12 days while they discussed what was wrong with the 22-year-old. After a week in coma, I was next in line for the MRI, and the result was 4 blood clots in my brain. When I woke up from the coma, I could only blink with my eyes. That was it. My arms and legs didn't function at all. My family was told that I most likely would die, or if not that happened, I would wake up in a vegetative state and probably never be able to sit, walk, or talk again. I was fortunate I survived. My way back started, and soon my left side came to life in the ICU. My right side was still paralyzed in the beginning, and still is partly put out of function. Rehabilitation started in my local hospital at first. Then I was moved to a specialized rehabilitation hospital for people with head injuries in Oslo, our capital. In total, I was hospitalized for about 5 to 6 months, and I worked really hard to get on my feet. It was probably the hardest training sessions I have ever done in my whole life. It was a real struggle to learn how to sit for the first time, then stand up, and eventually to walk a couple of steps. I'm really glad I didn't know what I had to go through when I started on the journey back to life. When I was able to walk a couple of meters for the first time, I was so proud. It was absolutely exhausting and wonderful at the same time. It felt like running a marathon. Not that I have ever done a single one. Head on, like any 22-year-old would do, I started the rest of my life. I used all my strength and stamina to relearn how to get my balance back, how to stand and how to walk again. I left the wheelchair and started on my life as a standing and walking stroke survivor, with a characteristic limping due to my partly paralyzed right side. After about 20 years, where my left side was the dominant party, I had to stiffen the proximal joint on my left big toe, and whoosh, the balance quickly disappeared. I had used my left side way too much, and the arthritis train started its journey. First on my left and good side, which left me quite imbalanced for a couple of years, and then on the right, partly paralyzed side. The landslide of broken bones in my right leg was a result of several things. An early onset of menopause, the lack of use of my legs, and medicine with side effects. Both my hips and my lower back are also osteoporotic, and I have been told to use my legs as much as possible so that new bone structure can remodel. After each broken bone session, and that's 4 metatarsals in 2016, all 3 ankle bones crushed in 2018, at last but not least, the cracked heel bone and 2 metatarsals in 2020, in the midst of COVID. I have started from scratch and used time and patience to build up myself again. Even if it took 1 year or 3 to get back on the horse and learn how to use my leg for walking. To be a stroke survivor means for me to be strong. And if you can set your mind on doing what it takes, you can certainly have a good quality of life. The last 7 to 8 years, I've had the nicest title. I'm a walking wheelchair user. I can walk, but now preferably with a walker or a stick when I'm far away from my orthopedist, and then to use a wheelchair when my legs and back needs a timeout. This was a short introduction to my stroke story. Now let's talk about what it is that helps us to keep active. I decided early in my stroke story that I wanted to get as active as possible, and I have been connected to several physiotherapists on my path. I need them to be able to do my exercises correctly due to missing body awareness and loss of function. As a former swimmer, footballer, volleyballer, and handballer, I have been active for as long as I can remember, and I have kept the motivation of exercising with me this whole time. I can see the results. Even the smallest steps are very fulfilling to experience. After I had my stroke, my first and most important goal was to be able to go back to work. And I did, after 10 months. I have been to several rehabilitation centers where I have had intensive weeks of rehab to help me get even further than I could imagine. I especially remember how nice it was to swim 30,000 meters during a 3-week rehabilitation stay for the first time after my stroke. I had been swimming in a warm therapy pool for some time before I applied for a second 3-week rehabilitation stay at the same health sports center where I had regained my water balance a couple of years earlier. My feeling of happiness when I finally managed to reach the 30,000 meter mark was epic. I did the same 8 years later and finished at 28,700 meters, which was a huge disappointment at the time. But then my neck had started to be of the more stubborn kind, so I forgave my neck and embraced the length I was able to swim. When I'm in the water, there is no limping, just me and my arms and legs moving along. Throughout my rehab journey, I have always been motivated to go the extra mile, and this has helped me to get far, both physically and mentally, when learning how to cope with the side effects of being a stroke survivor for a long time. As a stroke survivor, especially when there are physically challenges afterwards, my focus has been on maintaining my strength, balance, and stamina. And my current PT is a great motivator and guide. With spasticity and partially paralyzed right side, I know that I have to exercise to be able to prevent severe muscle stiffness, painful muscle spasms and contractions. But it has to be the correct amount of exercise. Too much, too fast, and too heavy can be the one and only thing that ruins a week. When I'm at my PT's gym, I always start my training session with a warm-up on the ergometer bike for about 10 minutes. This jump starts the muscles and tendons, and the workout is easier to complete without injuries. I go through 5 or 6 stations in the gym, and I often start with the arms, where both the biceps and triceps together with the lateral muscles will get its turn, before I move to the leg press and push my legs to the limit, with quite heavy resistance to build bone structure. If I have more juice left in my legs, I do deep squats to the point where I know I can reach my wheelchair that is parked about 2 meters away from me. This is a new approach towards strength training for me, and started with my new PT with expertise in neuro rehab. I am grateful for the new opportunity I now have, and I can often feel the endorphins as they rush through my body after a workout. Whenever I have time for it, I meditate and do Qigong exercises. Some of them standing up and most of them sitting down for security reasons. Activities like these have been an important part of my journey, as I meditate to clear my mind and do Qigong exercises to challenge my balance and calm my inner being. One of the fine things about these calm activities is that it helps me to focus. To exercise my right and robotic-like hand, I knit and crochet. I have to concentrate to hold the needles long enough to form a stitch. And if the needles are a bit too smooth and even slippery, I'm also exercising my patience. As time has passed, I've got quite a lot of pain in my body due to my funny walk and swerving around in the world. Neurological pain came to the door one day when I had a severe fall, and that's one of many. And this led to the use of wheelchairs in my daily life. And my saying is walk, wheel, knit, sleep, repeat. I love to have my wheelchairs when they are needed, but my dream is to be able to use my legs all the time. I hope research one day will find a cure for fragile bones without all the side effects. 7 years ago, I went through pain rehabilitation at the same hospital where I started to walk again. I was there together with a whole group of people who had long-term pain as the common denominator. We learned how to think of the pain as a friend and not the enemy. I especially think of my nagging neuropathic pain, which had been dragging me through the mud of depression for some time. By being active, or more specifically by exercising with higher pulse in different ways, like swimming and strength training, exercising on an indoor arm bike, or by being outdoors, hiking, that means wheeling to me, in all kinds of weather, made me more resistant and more able to take better care of my own well-being. During these 3 weeks of rehabilitations, we also had some interactive theory sessions to help us better understand the different kinds of pain we can experience and how to master the challenges we face. In these group settings, we often came up with a lot of possible solutions ourselves, and we learned a lot from each other as well. The occupational therapist had a lot of tools that we could use, that I even use today, like making a weekly plan where I categorize my activities into must do, should do, how to refill energy, and when to rest. I still use that same tactic whenever I feel like the train moves too fast and I have to organize my activities. As I am the only one living my life, it is also my duty to take responsibility for my own life and its quality. I know by experience that when I'm active, I can keep both my pain and spasticity on a distance. So I try to do as much of it as I can tolerate before the pain takes over and the gain of moving is lost. Both my husband and I are active and exercise regularly, and we have got all kinds of equipment at home, like a treadmill, an indoor training bike, weights, and rubber bands, and even a Terra trainer, that's like an arm bike, to help keep the neck and back, as well as my arms, fit for fight. I have learned that every stroke survivor should exercise to keep their strength, stamina, and balance in good shape. To be active and exercise also keeps us sane and physically able to tackle more of our daily life. Physical and psychological health often goes hand in hand, so please take care of them both. So keep on going. You mean something to someone. We all deserve a decent life. I have to stop this speak with my life motto, which is a life saved must also be lived. Thank you so much for your attention.
So that was wonderful. Thank you so much to our amazing speakers. And Greta, deservedly, in the chat box, there's lots of people commenting on just how very inspirational your story is. I think you really are a role model to other stroke survivors in terms of your determination to keep going. So thank you all very much. So just to remind you, it would be great if you could complete the poll with the question, is physical exercise and activity important for stroke survivors? And I'd now like to welcome back our wonderful speakers onto the stage, and we will start the Q&A. So we've had a couple of questions already posted. So one of the questions was to Craig Pankhurst, asking if a stroke of luck in the UK ever do live sessions, and Craig has recommended that you follow a stroke of luck on social media because they do occasionally do live sessions. So that's really useful. Thank you, Craig, for that response. And then Anita from the Stroke Association in the UK has asked a question. So as a stroke survivor, what advice would you give family, friends, supporters who want to encourage and support someone who's had a stroke to get more active? What worked for you and what did you hate people saying? So I'm going to ask Greta, first of all, if you don't mind, Greta, just to reflect on the second question. What worked for you in terms of starting your physical activity journey and sticking with it? And what did you hate people saying to you?
I didn't hate anything they said, but well, I was 22, and if you know any 22-year-old, they are head on and doing all they can, and that was what I was doing. I started doing exercises as soon as I could, and I haven't stopped yet. And I didn't listen to those, but that was telling me that you can't do that sort of thing. You had a stroke.
Yeah, fantastic, Greta. So, I mean, it's about motivation, it's about determination, isn't it? And
Yeah.
just keeping going. And I thought it was interesting, Greta, that you mentioned in your video the link between physical health and mental health, because we all know that the more we move, actually the more we feel better psychologically and emotionally. So I thought that was really important. And maybe I'll direct the first part of Anita's question to Marie and Sarah. So from your research, do you have any evidence of what works in terms of support from family and friends to encourage stroke survivors to get physically active? Sarah, you're nodding. Any thoughts from you?
I mean, not evidence specifically, but just from things that people have told us within kind of qualitative, well, it is evidence within qualitative interviews. But just, it's really that support and understanding, and almost not comparing yourself to that person. So saying, oh, I've experienced that as well. I think it's kind of, everybody's quite individual. So just kind of trying to be there to support and understand and listen. So a lot of the kind of things that we were doing within paras with the healthcare professionals were about kind of teaching those kind of listening skills, and I think that that's the same for kind of anybody that's supporting someone to try and be more active after stroke, and just being really positive if someone's achieved something really good, because I think everyone feels a little bit better if kind of, you know, they've worked really hard on something and then they get a little bit of positive feedback. And I think sometimes it's going along to these things and joining in as well. I know when I did my exercise trial, kind of, you know, afterwards, people were saying, oh yeah, kind of, it's great to allow my husband's getting involved, or, you know, and so I think that's really nice to kind of join people on their journey as well.
Yeah, I love that, Sarah. So kindness, encouragement, and get stuck in yourself. I think that's great. Marie, any thoughts from you?
Well, I totally agree with both Sarah and Greta. We know that adherence to physical activity is you know, it's dependent on support from caregivers. So it is important that caregivers, family, other supporters are there for them. So yeah, totally agree with what you already said.
Fantastic. Great. And then we've got a question from Dawn Hilton, and specifically this is to you, Greta. So how have you managed to keep your motivation going after 14 years? I struggled to keep exercising,
After
and I never liked
14,
it before. Well, it's even longer for you. It's more. It's longer, isn't it?
It's 28 or almost 29. Well, after each time recently I have broken a lot of bones, and after each time I set my goal at 0, and then the only thing that's happened, the only thing that happens is positive things for me.
Yeah, and Greta, I'm interested in finding out, do you find that being physically active has helped with your fatigue or tiredness levels? Because we were hearing in an earlier session about the link between increased physical activity and reduced fatigue. Have you experienced that, Greta?
Yeah. And then there is too much exercise, and then the next week is perfect. Well, if I don't do the exercises, I get a lot of pain, a lot of spasticity, which can lead to pain. And when I am active, I reduce my pain level and my spasticity level. So I can't stop doing exercise. Never. I will stop when I die.
So that's really interesting, Greta, because you know you're talking about improved, you know, physical function, improved health-related quality of life, some of which were not proven, were they, Marie, by the last study? And Marie, there's a question in the chat box about when the last long study is due to finish. When do you think you will have results?
Well, that is a slightly difficult question, but we are still recruiting patients into this study. So we are planning to finish the inclusion of patients in January next year. And so the last patient is also supposed to be followed for 18 consecutive months. So we know that there will be, well, probably about 2 years until we really finish the whole RCT. Yeah.
Okay, that's really helpful to understand, Marie. It sounds like a really interesting study understanding the role of stroke coordinators in follow-up. And Marie and Sarah, what are your thoughts on what future research is needed around physical activity and stroke?
I think, I mean, I think there are a lot of parallels between my talk and Mari's actually about kind of personalized care and how we kind of change people's behavior in the long run. And I think it's really getting kind of longitudinal data to see how, you know, people can maintain motivation and how that impacts kind of quality of life and health and, you know, other related conditions like you talked about. Greta talked about her arthritis and things. So I think it's collecting those big long data sets to kind of give us more information about that, and collecting really rich data. So making sure that we think about kind of qualitative data alongside quantitative outputs to make sure that we really understand it. I think it's really difficult to measure physical activity, so I think it's about kind of how we measure that in the future, because often I think sometimes trials are looking like they're not showing an outcome, but actually it might be to do with kind of the outcome that's been measured. So I think that's really important, and I think we can get that rich data by kind of combining quantitative and interview kind of focus group data.
That's really helpful, Sarah. And Marie, what do you think?
Well, I agree with Sarah with this mixed method approach. I think that is really important. And I also think that in order for the evidence sort of to progress, we need also more high quality randomized control trials, because, well, the recommendations regarding physical activity today, they are mainly based on expert opinions and extrapolated results from studies that were conducted in primary prevention. So we need even more studies in secondary prevention as well. And I believe that developing interventions to really enhance adherence to physical activity, and maybe especially in the long term after stroke, should be given priority. And we need more focus on this evidence-based implementation strategies, more of the whole process, as I think Sarah also was talking about here. And also with sort of the aim of helping stroke survivors to sustain physically active over time, we should probably also do more research on the different technologies out there, developing mobile technology or, you know, wearables in order to motivate and maybe to give feedback and track patterns of physical activity, which is especially designed for stroke survivors. I believe that also should be or should be prioritized in future research.
The lovely resources that Craig had kind of that's been created. I think it's really important to kind of look at the use of telehealth as well, and how that's you know, can motivate people too.
Yeah, fantastic. Really rich reflections. Well, sadly, time is up. So I would just like to extend another huge thank you to all of you as speakers. They really were wonderful presentations. And Greta, I think you've inspired us all, including those of us who are maybe not as physically active as we should be, to get going. So thank you. And for those of you who may have missed part of this session or some of the earlier sessions today, they will be posted online. You can catch up on them at the end of the month at the website elasf.org. And this is just another final plug for our in-person event, which will be in Barcelona on the 10th of March 2023. So thank you all very much and have a good rest of the day. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye.